Welcome to One Bite is Everything, the podcast where tiny informed choices can make a big impact on your health, community, and the planet. I am your host, DiPrima. Today, I'm thrilled to bring you a fascinating conversation with rancher Jordan Beeman of HeartBrand Beef in Texas. HeartBrand is renowned for its exceptional Akaushi beef, which Jordan promises to be a superior eating experience. Jordan comes highly recommended by Chef David DeSalvo of Bowery Meats in New York City, who shares a passion for top quality ingredients, which he likes to honor on the plate in his restaurant by doing very little to enhance the natural flavor profile. Chef David is a purist and cares very deeply about sourcing his ingredients carefully and building a relationship with his producers in order to optimize your experience in his restaurant. Today, we'll explore HeartBrand Beef's interesting history and ongoing pursuit of excellence. Fifth-generation rancher Jordan Beeman will share some new, fresh, and emphatic positions on the finances behind beef, meat processing, and some hot takes about the industry. I don't know about you, but I love a good opinion that takes into account some serious experience and study. Jordan is a student of the game and a leader in the future of Akaushi cattle ranching. Get ready to dive deep into the world of premium beef and discover how HeartBrand is proceeding with confidence and enthusiasm.
Due to a unique opportunity in the Trade Act of 1992, a group of Texas businessmen were able to bring over a small group of Akaushi cattle in 1994. So it took from 92 to 94 for them to finally get the cattle out of Japan, flew them over on a specially equipped Boeing 47, made it to Long Island and kind of through Wisconsin, and then finally to the ranch to which we still operate on today. So from 94 to 98, we weren't involved with the business, but they started growing Akaushi, getting more and more cattle out there. And then in 1998, our family first got involved as a service provider. My dad owned a plant called Eddie Packing, and we worked for a service provider from them from 1998 until 2006. And we purchased the assets in 2006.
So somebody else brought the cows here. It was their project. And then
that's correct.
And you were a processor?
Yep. And raising cattle and other things. But yeah, processing was one of the biggest portions of it.
I want to understand the Texas landscape there because I know it's really tricky across the country. Are you guys losing USDA processors down there?
Not really. Maybe some, but not really.
And is that how you process your beef?
Yeah, all under USDA. Yeah, the biggest problem with why we're losing processors is because there's not money in the business. It's extremely simple why we only have 4 packers. It's because the business does not make very much money. And it especially does not make much money when you figure it on an EBITDA basis with how much money you have to invest. The cash on cash return put into the business is very low. So there's no reason why that if you or anybody would come to me with $1 billion that we couldn't start our own meat plant. It actually would be quite simple. Unfortunately, we need damn near $1 billion. It's going to cost them $700 million to build the big plant in Amarillo that they're proposing to build. And then we need a year of funding to get the plant going. And then we need operating capital to make it roll. So the reason why is there's nobody in private, traditional private equity or people that are even venture capital that would even come and put the money to see the returns for what it would take for the amount of investment that it costs to put in a beef plant. And so we're lucky that we still have 4 people who are focused on it and really interested into the business. It's really that simple. Like if you look at Tyson's, big publicly traded company, if you look at their capital they have invested and then go look at their net returns and then look at their net returns as a percent and then compare that to just about anybody else that's publicly traded, and they're going to be at the bottom of that realm.
I've mentioned this in previous episodes, but here is a refresher. The big 4 meat processors in the U.S. are Tyson Foods, JBS USA, Cargill, and Smithfield Foods. Tyson Foods, the largest chicken producer, also leads in beef and pork. JBS USA, a subsidiary of the global giant JBS SA, is a top beef and pork processor with strong presence in poultry through Pilgrim's Pride. Cargill, a diverse food corporation, has major operations in beef and pork. Smithfield Foods, the world's largest pork processor is known for its extensive range of pork products. Together, these companies dominate the U.S. meat processing industry.
I mean, it's as simple as that, is why there's only 4 major meat packers out there. It's because there's not enough money for ConAgra, who would be another really big publicly traded branded meats company, to where Tyson was 6%, ConAgra was 8 or 10%. You know what I mean? Business doesn't work that way.
These big meat packers, they're dealing with either meat that's coming in from overseas, or they're dealing with really big ranches.
No, I don't agree with that. These meat packers are dealing with feedlots. They're not dealing with ranches, with feedlots. They're dealing with the intermediaries between a ranch who are commingling even bigger groups of cattle. Like a big rancher in our country has no real leverage. They have no percent. They have no big control. They have no nothing. They're selling to feedlots. Maybe the best case scenario, they're selling to feedlots. There's even somebody in between them. But then these feedlots are then selling to these big meat packers. And the big meat packers are bringing in very little outside meat into this country. They're probably exporting more meat than they're bringing in.
And who owns the feedlots?
So the largest feedlot is called Five Rivers. You have Cactus, which is 100% employee owned, to my understanding. And then you have probably like 6 or 8 of them that are 2 steps below that. So the big one where we have would be like Freon Industries. Then there's like Great Plains, and I don't even know the names of the others. But like there's no big conglomerate or no big anything that owns any of these feedlots.
So the processors aren't owning the feedlots?
Very little, if any.
And the feedlots are aggregating cattle from ranchers from all over?
That's correct. And internationally, and bringing a lot from Mexico and bring them in from Canada too.
I talk to a lot of small and mid-sized farmers, and in various locations, they're struggling with processor. I mean, definitely through COVID, but even after, trying to find a place to process, and also running up against limitations in terms of being able to use even in-state custom processor, which would allow them to sell it to retail within their own state. And those smaller USDA processors, it's hard for a small one, even with a tight market, to make money. Is it because we have these 4 that are controlling sort of most of the beef and the beef prices in the country?
I do not think they control the prices. So I do not at all have the poor me producer mentality. So just so you know where I'm coming from, I'll tell you exactly what's facts and what I think. I feel like there's a poor me producer mentality a lot in this country, to where they're like, somebody should pay us more. But you got to go out and drive and create your own value why somebody should pay you more. And unfortunately, it's extremely expensive, and it takes a lot of capital to tie all that up, right? And what's unfortunate is we, including me, we're in this low margin business. So where there's just not that much margin for somebody else to pick it up along the way. And the producer, the rancher, usually thinks someone else is getting all the margin, to where unfortunately there's not the case. Like even Five Rivers, margin's going to be extremely tight, like for how much money they have to put at risk and how much capital they have to put at risk. Like whether you like them or not, the amount of capital and risk that they're having to take on for an extremely tight margin, we should applaud them for that, just for what they're having to do. They are big business, and they're the ones taking huge amounts of cattle and getting them fat. But like without that, we don't have a beef business in this country. You know what I mean? So there's just not very many small, local, well, let's just call them properly inspected, whether you want to call it state or USDA inspected facilities, is because it takes quite a bit of capital as well. You know, it's not 700 million, but it's 2 million, 4 million, even a small one might be $1 million, you know, whatever size you want to come up on to be able to do that. And unfortunately, there's ranchers that do it and try and come up with groups to put them together, but they just at a very small amount can be successful because of how hard it is to make it work. It's nothing to do with the big 4 coming after somebody like that. The big 4 could give 2 shits less about somebody who's killing less than 100 head a day. Absolutely not. Now, don't get me wrong. If you and I wanted to come open a plant and we wanted to kill 2,000 a day, the big 4 is going to come at us because we're going to go after their business. But if you and I wanted to kill less than 100 a day, they'd shake our hand and wish us luck.
I want to talk about the market that you've created there in Texas with the beef that you've got. Let's go back to the loophole. Is that what it is?
Unique opportunity.
The unique opportunity. Explain that unique opportunity.
It was before my time. All I have is what has been told to me, but it was to get the cattle to export, get a bill of sale, and get the quarantine papers all within 24 hours. And with the help of a Korean exporter and a Japanese vet, they were able to pull that off. And we didn't have anything to do with all this. That's just how the story was told to us.
Right. It was a trade agreement?
The Trade Act of 1992, which I don't even know if that's the truth or not. That's how it always has been told to us.
The Trade Act of 1992, though not specifically aimed at Wagyu beef, paved the way for its entry into the U.S. market. By emphasizing science-based sanitary measures, these policies streamlined the import process for beef that met stringent U.S. health standards. They also reduced tariffs and improved market access, making it more feasible to indulge in premium products like Wagyu. Regulatory harmonization between the U.S. and Japan helped smooth out the complex landscape for importers. As American consumers develop a taste for high-quality beef, the market for Wagyu expanded. These collective efforts made it easier and more economical to import this luxurious beef, boosting its popularity and availability in the United States.
We first got involved in 98, and that's as if they were telling us this stuff. And we got involved more than just as a meat packer. We bought cattle from them. We raised cattle for them. Because once you try this beef, you're like, holy shit, this is good. Like, how can I learn more? How can I do more with this? And I'm a 5th generation cattle rancher. You know what I mean? Like, my family's the people that have been out here on this land for 5 generations, figuring out how to make it in this business. Like, our mission is to provide the best beef feeding experience possible. And that's what this beef, that's what this cattle, that's what this breed allows us to do.
What's the flavor profile?
It's a nice, clean, beefy, buttery flavor to it. You don't get the hints of caramel popcorn and blue cheese, none of that you get from dry age. But it's tender and consistent.
And are you guys the only herd in the U.S.?
Not anymore. So we have since sold cattle. So we have sold females and males to other people. So there are other people. I don't want to say they have what we have, because we still think we have the best, and we do a lot along the way to keep really good cattle and breed really good cattle and make our cattle better. But in theory, they have the similar genetic potential. Some people could say the same genetic potential that we have. Like, we will sell someone semen on any bull that we own, on 90% of the bulls that we own.
Then you're managing your genetics. You're like, this is a great bull. This is a great cow. She raises great babies.
That's exactly right. Like, to begin, we look at which bulls have the most muscle, which have the best, deepest spring of rib, which have the nice, strongest top line, which ones have really good structure, like walk well, really good knees, hips. Then we look at their numbers, like which ones came out at a reasonable size, like 72 pounds is our average. We don't want them to be bigger than 90 pounds when they're born. So that's how we first pick a bull. At 5 years down the road, then we see how the offspring of those bulls have marbled. Then we finally have enough offspring of them to be like, damn, these actually bulls are really good, but their offspring is marbling better than average. So then we go back to the frozen semen we have of those bulls, and then we start flushing, breeding those bulls to cows in like IVF, in vitro fertilization. Generically, we call it flushing, but just trying to make more babies out of those bulls that are really good. And we do the same scenario with the mother, but it's much harder to find the superior ones out of the mother, because generally the mother only gives us one a year. So first we see a bull, we like the way he looks, we like his numbers, we like his pedigree. Then we start breeding him. And then 5 years down the road, we have enough offspring to have enough critical mass. If he's made it the whole way through, to be like, oh, hell, his calves are really marble well. So, I mean, that's like the 15-year process of how we pick good ones.
So how much semen are you taking from these bulls in their lifetime?
So there's natural breeding. There's artificial insemination, where we take one straw of semen and put one straw of semen in one cow. And then there's the greater thing called flushing or IVF. So there's 2 different ways to do it. So there's 3 ways we do it. Let's just say embryo transfer. Instead of saying flushing, let's just say embryo transfer. It covers a bigger group of ways to do reproduction. So there's natural service, there's AI, and then there's embryo transfer. So your question, how much semen do we collect on a bull? It varies hugely. Like, the biggest bulls we collect on the highest amounts could be 5,000 to 8,000 straws. On a bull that we collect and we want to collect just because we think he could be good, don't know he's good, it could be 100, would be on the small side. We're really willing to do 100. Usually it would be more like 500. It's just, how good do we think the bull is? How good do we find out he could be later? So like these bulls that we find out that are good from 3 years and even 5 years, if they're still alive, we'll collect them again. And that's the bulls could collect 5,000 to 8,000, something like that. So there's a few bulls that we keep to ourselves that we think are pretty good game changers, that we know from our own internal stuff that we're actually going to breed more of them to make our cows, to continue to have our cows better. And then there's some that we just offer at a price list and just sell them. Like Jake, for example, is the bull right now that we think is really good. So we're not really offering him out, but we're breeding him really heavily because we think it's going to give us a 5-year advantage on the rest of the industry. And it's not a huge advantage. We're talking like an advantage like this.
I feel like my listeners are going to be upset if I don't ask how you get semen out of a bull.
Yeah. So the main way we get it out, we outsource it to a company called Elgin Breeding Service, and we take that bull and they collect it. So they have it's usually a steer, and they put, I don't know what you call it, but it's just like cow in heat smell on him. They grab him, and then they have they call it an AV, but an artificial vagina. And they take his penis and put it in there, and he ejaculates in it. And then they process it and freeze it in individual straws.
So he mounts the steer.
But they grab the penis before it goes into the artificial vagina, and it captures the semen.
The artificial vagina, is it attached to the steer?
Not at all. The dude holds it in his hand.
Right. Is that a high-paying job?
I bet not, but I don't know. Not high enough.
So we started with 15 of these very special cows, 3 bulls. The 4th bull was born here.
Shig, Tam, and Hikari flew over on the airplane. Big Al was born here in January of 95. And then 2 other bulls came over in 1976, Rushaw and Judo. You
got 2 more bulls.
They came over in 1976.
How did they get here? Same opportunity?
That was even more different. To my understanding, there was 4 Wagyu or Japanese bulls that came over. Mazda and Mount Fuji as well, which were the black bulls, and Rushaw and Judo were the red bulls. And those came over in 1976, probably to like Washington State in some kind of research project, some kind of way.
Wagyu beef, originating from Japan, is renowned for its exceptional quality, primarily due to its high marbling, which contributes to its tenderness and rich flavor. Raised under specific breeding and feeding practices, Wagyu cattle produce meat with intense intramuscular fat, resulting in a buttery texture and exquisite taste. The cattle's diet of grains and careful management, including stress-reducing practices, further enhances the meat's quality. This meticulous care results in Wagyu beef being highly prized for its superior flavor, tenderness, and unique fat profile, making it a sought-after delicacy globally. And so they were interbreeding those with the cows that we had?
Probably, yes. But there's still semen on Judo and Rushaw today. And we still breed those bulls today. So what else is cool about semen is we do not know how long it'll last, because the semen that's being collected that has been properly stored and properly handled is still good today. So like the first semen is still good today. So I mean, it won't last forever, right? It might not last 1,000 years, but it'll last 100. It might last 500. It might last till as long as that plastic or little container that it's in will last.
I want to hear more about the business, like how this works. I like the whole idea that you're not sitting around going, oh, poor me, you've created this market, or you've taken the opportunity that you had to obtain these bulls and cows in this herd, and you're making an incredible business opportunity out of it. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we sell to both big box food service distributors and specialty meat distributors across the country. So we don't even know who all of our end users are that are buying it, which is kind of cool about our model. So we go into a market and we support a distributor, and then that distributor goes out and sells the product. And then we sell retail, and then we sell direct to consumer via our website, HeartBrandBeef.com.
And if you sell it to a distributor, are they selling it under your name or theirs?
Both. Yeah. So we would love for them to all sell underneath our name, but sometimes it loses its identity along the way. Some people just sell it as Wagyu. And then
Okay.
some people sell it all the way as HeartBrand Akaushi beef.
So this kind of beef is actually Wagyu, what you have.
Correct. Yeah, it's a specific type of Wagyu.
How many types of Wagyu are there?
We're under the understanding there's 4 main types. I'm even saying there's only 4, but there's Krohishi, which is what people typically call Wagyu. They're the ones that are black in color. There's Akaushi, and then there's a Japanese pole and a Japanese shorthorn, which I don't even know if those other 2 have left the country ever. Or any thoughts to them?
And I've heard, like, is there some kind of watering down of Wagyu, or is there some like loose use of Wagyu?
By the USDA, yes, it definitely is still Wagyu. So you can take a purebred or higher Wagyu bull, which purebred would be like take a 93.75% bull, breed it to a regular cow, and call it Wagyu. My exact definition of what goes in our box is it's got to come from at least 1 registered Akaushi parent. So then you have the Wagyu purist who thinks that anything less than that, anything less than full blood is just horrible, right? So, but then at that size, you're going to get a very small amount. You're not going to have enough to go after very much market, and it's going to be very expensive to raise. So you just have various different ideas of what people think should be allowed to call Wagyu. So we're not full blood Wagyu. None of the big programs in the U.S. that I know of are full blood Wagyu. We take it to the highest standard of Wagyu by being from at least 1 parent verified by DNA.
And what other kinds of cattle are you?
Domestic cattle. We do not make a breed claim on the other side.
Just regular old cattle.
Regular cattle. Yeah. The vast majority of what we mix with is Angus type because 60-ish% or maybe 70-ish% of the U.S. cow herd is Angus type. But we're not even saying it's Angus. We're just saying Angus type, and we're not even making a breed claim that it's Angus because everything that's black in this country is considered Angus nowadays.
So with chefs like David, he's got standards and passion, and he wants to bring the best possible beef to his customers and to be able to talk about it and to make it personal. So you guys have a relationship. What is that like?
Our distributor usually makes the first contact, which is Lee Seelig there in Farmingdale, New York. And he sold him for a little while. And then I came into town and rode with Lee to go see some of his customers. And he's like, hey, let's go meet customers. And then that's where I got the chance to go meet David. And then I emailed and talked with David for times before, like either he's happy with the product, he tells me about it. He's unhappy with the product, he tells me about it. We fix it, because we're still not perfect, right? Like we still only grade our animal at 1 portion at the 12th and 13th rib. So it's possible that it looks good at the 12th and 13th rib, but the steak that David gets doesn't look right. It has too much fat on it, has not enough fat on it. We're still dealing with live animals, right? Like not even my animals are perfect. Now they're right a higher percent of the time, but still it's live animals, and the exact cut David gets might just have too much fat on it for his spec. So that's how we continue to build relationships with them. And then when I was in New York, I don't know, just called a month ago, I went by and visited with him and met more of his team and just got to hang out with him in the cooler and be in the back of the restaurant with them and tell them even more about what we do. And then what I tell people is what's unique about dealing with HeartBrand is you're dealing with the ranch. Very few times in business, in the meat business, do you get to deal with the ranch. See, we're ranchers first, 5th generation cattle rancher from Texas. So ranchers got in the meat business, pretty successful in the meat business, continued in the meat business and learned how to sell branded meats and moved along the way. Most of the time, best case scenario is you're dealing with a meat packer or you're dealing with somebody who has a brand and they establish what their brand is and they're putting meat together to fit their brand. But what's so cool about HeartBrand is you're dealing with the actual ranch. You're dealing with the rancher. I'm sitting in Flatonia, Texas today. I was at the ranch this morning and came to the office so I could get fiber internet so we could have a Zoom call. We live in a town of 1,200 people. You're dealing with the rancher.
When we're talking about the breed of the cattle is doing 80% of the work. The 2030, tell me what your 2030 is there that you're.
So number one, we feed our cattle all natural and we treat our cattle like we treat our children. We will treat our cattle on a case-by-case basis with therapeutic antibiotics. So if we see one that's out in the pasture, and the most common thing would be similar to a cold, respiratory issue, and we can give them an antibiotic to take care of them, we treat them with that, which is almost the exact same type of antibiotics that we treat ourselves with or we treat our children with. But we don't mass treat them. We don't treat the entire herd. We treat cattle on a case-by-case basis. Also, we don't give them any growth promotants. We don't put any things in their ears to make them grow faster. We don't put anything in their feet to make them grow faster. We're not against it. We actually think that growth promotants are a very good management tool for cattle. And I personally think that they're a very good management tool when we're trying to feed a world that's continuing to grow, that's not adding any more land masses or places that we can grow protein. However, for my brand, for our brand, that's after the best beef feeding experience possible, and we're asking people to pay us more for that, we do not use growth promotants because it is a fact that the faster an animal grows, the less marbling it can put on. Because lean muscle tissue weighs more than marbling. And we know flavor and tenderness comes from marbling. So that's our choice. We're not saying it's right. We're not saying it's wrong. We're not even saying anybody else should or should not implant cattle. We're saying for us, this is what matters to us, because the mission that leads us every day is we want to provide the best beef feeding experience possible. And that's how I feel we can achieve it.
So growth promotants go in their food or in their ear? Is that what you said?
Usually their ear.
How do you mean? Like an injection?
It's a little pill, goes in their ear. Yeah, and it makes the animals, depending on who you tell, but I mean, it makes the animals 5% more efficient.
So meaning they eat this and they grow at a faster rate on the same amount of food.
That's correct.
And they don't marble as well.
That's correct.
Is that because of an age?
So as age grows up, as age goes higher, marbling goes higher. They're on the same scale up to some level. I don't know the level, but it's roughly 35 months.
Is that when you're slaughtering your animals around that time?
No, way more like 24. So we still have to make money and we still have to sell our product at a reasonable price. If I could, I'd feed them to 28 months, 32 months, somewhere like that. Like if you were to come to me and say, hey, I want the best meat and I'm willing to pay you for it, which everybody says they are, but nobody really is. You know what I mean? There's still a happy medium, right? We still got to get it to where there's a price that people can take our product and make their profit on it.
What would be the price differential between where you're slaughtering now and 32 months?
Like 1.5 more probably. If it's at $10, it'd be at $15, something like that. This is so important. The reason why is an animal at slaughter weighs 1,500 pounds. These are rough averages, right? Like we're going to simplify this. It weighs 1,500 pounds. Then the carcass weighs 900 pounds. Then from that carcass, you go to like 0.6 of that. So just say from 900 to 550, something like that. And then of that 550, half of that 550 goes to trim, hamburger meat, stew meat, sausage, something like that. So we're going from 550 to 275. Is that right? 275. And then so at 275, we're just now getting a product that we can sell for somewhat of a premium. So that's the problem, right? Like we're getting so much smaller. And then so that 275 has to go back to that 1,500, and that 275 pounds has to carry the premium of the whole 1,500. Because it's really hard to get a premium when you sell sausage, and it's not quite as hard, but it's still hard to get a premium when you sell ground beef. So let's just fast forward even smaller to where there's about 30 pounds of ribeye on an animal. There's about 28 pounds of strip on an animal, and then there's about 13 to 14 pounds of tenderloin on an animal. And that's where you can really gather your premium from. And there's a few other cuts like outside skirts, short ribs, chuck flap, maybe flank steaks, maybe a few other cuts that you get premiums on. But like I've been doing this my entire adult life and still struggle to get premiums on those cuts at scale, right? Like I could sell them at the farmer's market in Austin, and I could go sell a few of them and maybe 5 head a week and gather a premium. But I'm trying to move 350 head a week. Like trying to be the largest branded beef program in the state of Texas.
When we're talking about this very high end, like special product, right? Who's your competition?
So I look at this very uniquely. I think our competition is regular beef and USDA prime. I don't think we have direct competition because the market we're going after is so big. Our competition is the next easiest thing they can buy. So the true competition is this. It's Snake River Farms. It's me. It's Mishima. It's Imperial. That's direct competition. I don't know if they do, but I don't look at them as direct competition. I'm not going after Snake River Farms' business, and I'm not going after Imperial's business. Like I'm not scouring the web to go get their customer base to go call on their customers. And I really don't think they are trying to do mine either. Just like the big four, we're the same thing. We're the same four who are controlling the U.S. Wagyu business, and we're trying to go get other forms of business because it's easier. There's more of it, of people of buying USDA prime beef or just beef and go switch them to something better than to go find the tiny amount of people that are already buying Wagyu beef and go switch them over to my product. Just let's put this in a scale, right? Like I think, and I've seen this through other Wagyu presentations, there's 2,000, maybe 2,500 Wagyu cattle killed a week in our country. There's somewhere around 500,000 fat cattle killed in our country. I don't even know, I can't even move the decimal that many times to see how small of a percent that is. So why us four are doing a pretty similar thing, we need to go after the half a million, the 500,000, not just the other 2,500 of us that are out there. And then Australia's competition too, right? Like Australia just put a publication out that they're 60%, maybe 70% of the food service Wagyu business in this country. And they're like 30 or 40% of the retail Wagyu business in this country. Now, I don't agree with that. That got Wagyu people all pissed off and ranchers and stuff that how are we letting Australia do this? But hell, just go out and try and sell more beef.
What else is going on in your industry that's important to share?
I think a big thing to think about is the age of the average American rancher. I don't know that number, but it's old.
According to the 2022 Census of Agriculture, the average age of U.S. farmers is 58 and getting older. With older producers retiring, there's a pressing need for the next generation to sustain agriculture's role in producing our food. Young producers inheriting family farms often face challenges securing funding and learning modern techniques. Add to that the roller coaster ride of unpredictable weather and market swings, and you've got a recipe for caution. The lifestyle doesn't help either. Long hours, physical labor, and seasonal work doesn't quite fit the bill for those seeking a more predictable 9-to-5 gig. With other career paths offering stability and perks, unless farming and ranching is a lifestyle thereafter, fewer younger people are considering agriculture as a career path these days.
There's two things I think we have to think about. Is how do we get more younger qualified people, not just younger people, they got to be qualified people to continue into this. And how do we continue to be able to have enough good product to continue to differentiate ourselves out there? Because it costs more to produce in the US. Like we're competing against Australia. Now we compete against Brazil, Uruguay, all those people, and I welcome it. But how do we continue in the US to produce the best, safest, most consistent beef supply out there, which I still think we do today. But, it's just tough to ask somebody my age to come back into this business when I know the hours, I know the time that it takes, but, somebody can be in a completely different industry that doesn't have the same trials that ours has. And then the other thing I ask is, how do we get our group to actively portray positively to what we do and continue to combat everyone that's coming after our way of life? And I mean, that's in the broadest sense, like the people who think we need to eat some other kind of protein, plant-based protein. Like, how do we come after the people that act like we're putting out all this CO2 into the atmosphere or whatever it is? You look at a chart, beef cattle somewhere at 2% of the greenhouse gases or the CO2 or whatever number they put it at, like transportation's like 20 and industrial's like 20. And like you look at the others and you look at the chart and you're like, if we just quit traveling internationally for vacation, we can cut times 3 the amount of pollution into the atmosphere as if we're just worried about beef. But it's not just beef, it's like all production agriculture, right? I have a really good friend who's in the oil business, and he puts together this oil slide to how without energy, we don't survive. Without proteins from animals, we don't survive. And this country will probably never, this world will probably never survive without it, right? Like, I agree, we need to get proteins from other sources, but we don't need to make our sources look bad, and we don't need to have other people coming after us for the sake of their benefit. And the exact problem is, and the reason why this is a problem, is because those other people who have done this, like the Beyonds and the Impossibles, they've been able to raise money at a technology scale. They've been able to raise money on potential ability to make profits and to do well, to where they have the ability to go out and do marketing and do things that the beef business doesn't make enough money for or doesn't have enough potential to do.
Beyond Meat and Impossible Meat are leading brands in the realm of plant-based meat substitutes. Beyond Meat offers a range of products like burgers and sausages made from ingredients such as pea protein and coconut oil designed to mimic the taste and texture of traditional meat. Similarly, Impossible Meat, known for its Impossible Burger, utilizes soy protein and heme to create a meat-like experience that closely resembles beef in taste and appearance. Both brands cater to consumers looking to reduce their consumption of animal products without sacrificing the familiar culinary experience of meat. Both of these companies have had a ton of funding and have been endorsed by celebrities, catapulting them to initial success, but have recently been declining in popularity due to health concerns.
And they were able to raise money on unrealistic thoughts like technology can, and they were never technology businesses. So
well, they're going down.
They are. The current ones are, right? But who's going to raise money on the next scheme at a very unrealistic rate? Who is going to be able to put research or marketing dollars towards something to continue to come after us? Which I feel that's fundamentally incorrect, right? Like, Colin Woodall, I don't know if he's the president, but he's the chief person at the NCBA, National Cattlemen's Beef Association. He has a topic of like, what if we find something that can eat grass, that can procreate naturally, that can live off the sun and turn it into healthy protein? And it's a cow, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, it can live on the land and it creates protein automatically. So people act like what we do is so bad. To many world politicians, and you hear the idea of how bad all this stuff is, and it's actually the best thing and it's what we need. There's just no one really, there's no company, there's no entity that has a really big voice that cares about beef, right? Like when you get the celebrities who get behind those other things and they have really big voices and or they have really big supporters who have lots of money, then they're the ones who get behind it. And there's just nowhere that's in the cattle business or the beef business or anywhere that's just super rich like that or has super big voices like that.
Now, what do you think the biggest barrier is to young people coming in?
Having enough capital to be in this business. If I wasn't fifth generation, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing today. Not just the land, the owning of the cattle and how slow the turn of the capital is, and then how small amount of return you get off of that capital. Like if you looked at my business from an Excel spreadsheet, you'd think, what in the hell are they doing? If you only looked at it from an Excel spreadsheet, you'd be like, well, let's go do something else. You know, I mean, look at the amount of hours this guy has to work. Look at the amount of hours his staff works. Look at everything he's got. Look at how much he has invested for how much return he's getting, which turns into capital. Like having enough capital to do it. Mm-hmm. Then having enough capital to own the land is even another issue.
And you don't think there are big investors out there who are looking to say like, okay, let's save the future of people eating beef?
Not that I'm aware of. If you know them, let's connect with them. Like if there's some out there. But the problem is, if they talk to me, I tell them what the realistic is and what the realistic idea of a return is. Like I'm not here trying to put a business together to try and make a promote to put a business together and be gone in 3 years. You know what I mean? Like I don't live off of a promote. I live off of a net profit. And I don't live off of how I can gain top line sales to flip this thing to the next round to where I can just gain top line sales to build market cap. We have to live off net profit.
Right.
Which very few of the other businesses that raise money have to live off net profit. Mm-hmm. At the beginning, for sure. They just live off what they need to get to their next raise.
I think there's some heart and soul in your business that doesn't exist in some of these other kinds of businesses. There's a lot of passion that I hear when I talk to farmers and ranchers.
For sure. Yeah, but that doesn't equate to getting more capital into our business. That doesn't equate to better profit margins. Like my dad says, this business produces a very good way of life. I get to live in a town of 1,200. I get to go to the ranch, not quite whenever I want, but a whole lot. I get to work out there amongst the trees and the grass and the cows, of course, which is awesome. But the people that control the capital don't care about that. They care about the Excel spreadsheet.
I'm not sure if we finished with your 20% of how you raise your cows.
Feed them more, feed them slower, feed them longer, give them more, give them feed.
What do they eat?
A high energy ration consisting mainly of corn. That's what they finish on. They start on grass, and then we finish them on a high energy ration consisting mainly of corn. And that's the way cattle marble. Like you can talk about grass fed And you can say it's good, you can say it's bad. It just doesn't have marbling. It doesn't have marbling like good grain-fed beef, and the American consumer likes marbling.
Grain-finished beef has a very different flavor than grass-fed beef. Is Texas into grass-fed beef at all?
The urban people think it's a good idea. And I'm not saying whether it's good or not good. Like, I'm not here to even take a position on that. I'm just here to say that grain-fed beef gets the repeat sale. If you and I were to go get 100 Americans and we feed them a grain-fed steak, we feed them a grass-fed steak, and just ask them, which one do you like? We don't tell them anything different. 90 of them are going to like the grain-fed steak, something like that.
Yeah, it's a flavor profile we have grown accustomed to, for sure. Mm-hmm. Corn is not what cattle naturally eat, right? Like, they are grass machines. Now, they can eat anything. I understand they can eat Skittles or whatever. Is there a health concern for cows?
I do not think so. More so the reason why, like, if you have them, they can be in a 100-acre pasture, huge pasture with green grass, and the feed truck comes out there, they run and go eat the feed. They like it. It's not like you have to force them to eat it. It's not like it's not something they don't want. I'm not going to say anything good or bad about grass-fed. I do know this, though. If I ranch where I ranch, which is considered to be the best cow-calf country in the state of Texas, if not the United States, if I didn't feed my cattle a ration, something other than just what comes from the ground, the grass, my cows would starve.
Why?
So, because it doesn't rain all the time in Texas. We don't always get it. It freezes. The ground here cannot consistently produce enough food in the form of just straight roughage where the cows are to produce enough feed for the cattle to consistently live. You got to bring them something. When there's nothing, when we go through a drought, you got to bring them something.
We were talking just briefly, or we touched on imports and exports. What's the profile of that for the U.S.?
This year's going to be a huge import year, maybe the biggest import year ever.
Why?
The trend of the amount of cattle that we are going to process in the United States. It moves back and forth. And right now we're on the downtrend. So somewhere around 22 was a peak of amount of head that were processed in our country. And then so 22, 23 is down, 24 is down. I predict 25 is going to be lower of what we're producing in the U.S. We're going to produce like 2 or 3% less beef in the U.S. this year. That's my prediction. Like, our country fluctuates between 32 and 28 million beef cows per year on average. We peak somewhere in 2000, 2001. I don't know, at 31 something. And this year we're going to get down to 28, something like that. Last year we could have been close to 28. So just the amount of cows that are alive in our country is getting less. And that was due to the drought of 2022.
Okay. We have less cattle because we had a drought, and there's fluctuations, and the impact on that is we import more.
And we're going to import more this year. Yeah. This January was the biggest import month, I think, ever. I mean, that I saw on the chart for sure. And the reason why they produce so much, bring so much more in January is because the tariffs are lower at the beginning of the year.
Is there anything else you want to leave me with?
What I'd like to do is to get out and show the American consumer that beef is healthy. Ranchers take really good care of their cattle. These ranchers care about these cows. They take really good care of their cows. They're the way they make their living. So if you come here, you're going to see tons of cows out in the pasture, out underneath the oak trees. And if it's raining, they're going to be eating great, beautiful green grass that was grown right underneath them. If it's not raining, we might have to feed them. But we're going to be taking care of our cows, and we're going to be treating them to the best way possible. And there's a lot of different ways that it's done, right? It's done my way, which I think produces the best beef eating experience. But we need to support each other in this business because we're all producing great quality beef. And I specifically produce what I think is the best beef eating experience possible. And that's what leads us to what we do.
And when you say regenerative, you're talking about how people are handling cows on the land and moving them about?
Yeah, whatever they think they do differently than we do, I don't know. But there's people that are all about that. There's people that are all about grass-fed, whatever it is.
Well, your cows eating grass, are they moving around pastures as well? I imagine for all of that cattle, you have a pretty big space.
Yeah, huge space. But what's cool about it is, if they want to produce regenerative and be all about regenerative, then they get to go try and build their own brand and their own consumers that care about that. You know what I mean? And if I care about flavor and tenderness and texture, then that's what I'm building my brand about. And then, hopefully the consumers care about that. They want to have a good beef eating experience.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of One Bite is Everything. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Jordan Beeman of HeartBrand Beef in Texas. We learned about the unique journey of HeartBrand Beef from its origins with Akaushi cattle to its commitment to producing the best beef eating experience possible. Jordan shared insights into the challenges and rewards of maintaining sustainable practices, the intricacies of the beef industry, and the passion that drives his work. Remember, every bite you take is a vote for the kind of world you want to live in. If you want to learn more about HeartBrand Beef or try their products like I did, visit heartbrandbeef.com. Let's continue to support our farmers, honor their hard work, and celebrate the delicious, high-quality food that they provide. Until next time, keep making those tiny, informed choices that can make big difference. Stay tuned, stay curious, and keep savoring the journey with One Bite is Everything.
Have you met All Modern? All Modern brings you the best of modern furniture, and they deliver it for free in days. You heard that right, days. That way, you get your sofa ASAP and can sit comfortably while figuring out your other modern must-haves. At All Modern, you'll find only the best of modern, from Scandi to mid-century, minimalist to maximalist. Every piece is hand-vetted for quality by our team of experts and designed for real life. That's modern made simple. Shop now at allmodern.com.